What up, players? It's Warboss Tay up in this mud, and first of all, I want to show you kind of like what my work area looks like. For those of you who saw my video of what my setup looks like, I've got my tripod over here with all my messy paints that I have set out, my wet palettes and extra figures and stuff. Inside I've got my lights, little figures that I use for my silly videos and voices, hex rates, stuff I'm painting, stuff I have going on. And up here, let's take a look for just a second. I have a picture-in-picture, what's it called, view of what it looks like when I'm filming. So that's kind of how I can see. I'm always looking at that rather than the viewfinder of my camera. So right now I can see this is a little bit out of focus, so I just focus it a little bit. And yeah, so that's a really quick look at what my actual work setup looks like. I'm actually looking at my computer screen right now to make sure that this is in focus, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Caiaphas Cain, Defender of the Imperium. This is the second of the omnibuses of this character, Caiaphas Cain. Gotta say, for those of you who have read it and know me, you gotta know that this is the kind of book that I absolutely love. Totally tongue-in-cheek, taking the 41st millennium, all that grimdark stuff, and just turning it on its head. For those of you who don't know, this is going to be kind of an introduction of it. Now, this is the second book, like I said. If you want to get the first omnibus, it's called Hero of the Imperium. Kind of sets up who Caiaphas Cain is, his kind of his beginning adventures. And the really great thing is that these books are told, Sandy Mitchell is the author, these books are told almost in a very non-linear fashion. And to kind of set it up, they're all written in the first person, and they're all written to be memoirs of this guy, Caiaphas Cain, and his adventures as a commissar. Now, you might think, how can it be tongue-in-cheek? I mean, just the fact that it's a commissar means that he's got to be one of the most, hardcore, stern, strict disciplinarian guys in wherever he is in the universe, always looking for signs of weakness to have battlefield executions and stuff. Well, not this guy. This guy, Caiaphas Cain, is like the complete antithesis of what you would imagine a commissar to be. He is really looking out for himself and trying to all he wants to do is just keep himself safe and not get torn apart by horrible aliens or demons, and stay as far back from the fighting as possible, and just have a very comfortable wartime experience. And look at that chain blade, that is awesome. But for circumstances out of his control, he always gets thrown into these situations where he ends up doing something unbelievably heroic, and in order to just keep himself safe and to save his own skin, he just wants to sit in the back lines and stay away from all the action, but he has to do things that are crazy heroic, like for example, when he crash lands on an orc planet and is leading a bunch of the survivors out of the desert to get back to Imperial lines. He takes them through what he assumes is just a lightly guarded orc shantytown, and it turns out to be the war boss's main camp. And so things like that, where fate, circumstances, the universe throws him into situations beyond his control, where he has to, act on the spur of the moment, and it's just really well written, well set up. In this book, more than the first, I thought. In this omnibus, way more than the first one. And the fact that to the rest of the Imperium, Caiaphas Cain is seen as this legendary hero, courageous, heroic, always putting the fate of the welfare of his men and women under his command over his own safety, and for the Emperor all the way 100%. And little do the people know that this public persona is just kind of what he is forced to uphold in order to maintain his reputation, in order to keep getting cushy jobs where he thinks he gets to sit behind the lines as far away from the action as possible, and yet he keeps getting thrown into these crazy situations. So it's that dichotomy of taking the grim, dark 41st millennium and just turning it totally around and flipping it around and making it hilarious, fun to read, so much fun to read. I mean, if you enjoy the Horus Heresy books, if you enjoy the Inquisitor series, Ravener, Eisenhorn, and all of those very grim, very dark, and fatalistic kind of stories, this is like just a refreshing breeze compared to that. I mean, I equate all of those books, all that grim, dark stuff, to having a good, strong, very exquisite cup of bitter coffee. You know, it's dark, you don't put cream, you don't put sugar. It's like you can really taste that bitter, hot coffee flavor, that pure dark coffee flavor. And then you turn to this stuff, Caiaphas Cain, defender of the Imperium, and this is like, you know, your cappuccino. This is your mocha frappe with the whipped cream on top. This is taking all of the stuff that makes coffee what it is, and just like sweetening it up, making it totally accessible to anybody and everybody, and just giving you a good time with it. Like, I have such a good time reading these books. And let me give you a couple examples of really cool tongue-in-cheek stuff. The first thing you got to know with these books is that they're written as, oh, here's the original one, Caiaphas Cain, Hero of the Imperium, the first omnibus. They're written as like almost memoirs by a colleague of his who happens to be an inquisitor, and her name is Amberly Vale, and she belongs to the Ordo Xenos. So at the beginning of each big story, each book in this omnibus, she'll do like an introduction, and it'll always set up the rest of the story. So each time she puts in a note as the editor. She's compiling all of these memoirs, and they're all written by Caiaphas Cain, like first-hand reports. So she's compiling them as almost like research for her fellow inquisitors, and it's just so well set up. I mean, in the first omnibus, I thought it was just brilliantly done. So it's always italicized whenever she wants to put in her 2 cents. And the great thing about it is that he writes now at the end of his career. All of this that he's writing is like in retrospect, you know, looking back, and that's what really sets it up well, is that he's really well established after the 13th Black Crusade as this heroic figure of just bravery and heroism and courage and all of that, and that's his public persona. And then he comes back to his office where he teaches his own young commissar cadets now, and he just talks about how when he was young, and even now, he just wants to keep himself safe in a cushy job way behind the lines, and it's just really great. And another thing that makes this so different is because of his first-hand account, he will talk about he talks about things from his point of view, and his humor and his roguish attitude really just makes it so entertaining. And then you have footnotes by Amberly, Inquisitor Vale, and she will put in her 2 cents every couple of pages. She will add for the benefit of the reader what she either clarifying terms or things like that, or just putting her own personal spin on what he's talking about. Sometimes he'll mention, because he's a roguish guy. Like, this guy is such a rogue that he is always trying to hook up with the hot women, and he's always like talking about Amberly and just talking about how beautiful she is and how he loves spending time with her and various other women under his command. And so sometimes she'll put in like snide, snarky little comments about other women, or sometimes she'll put in like complimenting herself comments that compliment herself and her own spin. And it's so funny to hear her commenting on his personal memoirs. But great books, so much fun to read. A couple of choice bits that I want to point out. In the first novel, while he's trying to make it back to safety from orc-infested territory, one of the Vox operator in one of the survivors' chimeras, his name is Marconi, like the inventor of the telegraph machine, except instead of spelled Marconi in the real world, it's spelled Marquoni. So for somebody reading it who doesn't know, their history, then they might think like Marconi, but then somebody like myself who can appreciate that will be like, ha, awesome. Another thing that is funny is that the writer Sandy Mitchell will oftentimes talk about things in the 40K universe, but like make it very relatable to our real world. For example, he talks about this one lieutenant under his command, and he sees her as just really annoying, irritating. He doesn't want to have anything to do with her. and yet in her mind, she kind of looks up to him as like a mentor, and she thinks that he thinks of her as like his student, and that's just so funny that he can't stand her, but she's always trying to be near him, and so one great passage is that he says that she looked up at him with her eyes shining like she was a Juve or a juvenile. For those of you who haven't played Necromunda, a Juve who had just been asked by the captain of the Scala of the school scrumball team on a hot date. And I think that is just so funny. Scrumball, I don't even know what scrumball is, but the captain of the school scrumball team, like that's obviously, relatable to, school football team. It's just really great stuff like that, sprinkled in here and there. And the final bit I want to add in a tongue-in-cheek thing that I really thought was really hilarious was on he mentions that I think Amberly mentions in one of the footnotes that his former fencing teacher when he was going to school was named Miyamoto de Bergerac, which is a play on Miyamoto Musashi, who was like one of the greatest Japanese samurai ever, and Cyrano de Bergerac, the fictional character. So just really, really fun things like that. I think because this is the second omnibus, like this is already like the fourth, fifth, and sixth books in the series, the writer is allowed to take that kind of creative liberty and freedom and kind of make things really, really fun. So definitely check it out if you want something different from the grim darkness of other novels. If you haven't yet, if you have, you know that this is definitely my kind of literature, my kind of humor, and I want to know what you think. Have you read it? What do you think? Or if you haven't, does it interest you? So that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.